This happened about 3 years ago, back when I was 26, and living alone for the first time in my life. Not alone like a college dorm where there's always someone down the hall. Alone, alone. My own lease, my own name on the mailbox, my own silence every single night. I'd just come out of a long relationship, for years with someone, and then nothing. I moved into that apartment on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, in late October, which in hindsight was probably not the best time to start over somewhere new. The days were already getting short. The light was already going by 4:30 in the afternoon. I tell you that background because I think context matters when something like this happens. People always want to jump straight to the scary part. But the scary part only makes sense if you understand where I was mentally. I was lonely. I was adjusting. I was the kind of tired that isn't about sleep. I'm telling you this now because I still don't have an explanation, and I've thought about it almost every day since. The apartment was a one-bedroom unit on the third floor of a converted building in the Italian Village neighborhood. If you know Columbus, you know the area. Old brick buildings that used to be something else. Warehouses, small factories, storage facilities. Renovated sometime in the early 2000s and chopped up into residential units. Mine had exposed brick on one wall, which I thought was charming when I signed the lease. High ceilings, original hardwood floors that creaked in specific spots I'd memorized within the first week. The layout was simple. You walked into the front door, which opened into a short hallway. To the left, immediately, was the bathroom. Straight ahead the hallway opened into the main living area. Kitchen on the right. Living room straight ahead. Bedroom through the door on the far left wall. That was it. Maybe 700 square feet total. I knew that apartment. I want to be clear about that. I had lived there for almost 5 months by the time this happened. I knew where every piece of furniture was. I knew which floorboard by the kitchen sink would groan if you stepped on it at 2 in the morning. I knew the sound a radiator made when it kicked on just after midnight. This low metallic clank, then a hiss, then silence. I knew the way the wind came to the gap under the front door when it was cold out, and it was always cold in that building. I'm saying this because I need you to understand that I was not confused about my own home. I was not someone who forgot things or misplaced things or got disoriented in a familiar space. I was deliberate, almost compulsively so. Living alone for the first time, I made a point of knowing exactly where everything was. It was a Tuesday in late November. I remember the day because I'd had a work call that afternoon that had gone badly, and I remember being in a foul mood when I got home around 6:30. The temperature outside had dropped hard. It was that specific kind of cold where the wind doesn't just chill you, it pushes you. 22 degrees with wind chill, according to my phone. I remember checking it because I'd walked 2 blocks from the parking garage and felt like I'd made a genuine mistake. I came home, locked the door behind me, turned on the lights, made food, ate at the kitchen counter standing up because I hadn't bothered to buy a dining table yet. I watched something on my laptop, showered around 9, was in bed by 10:30. Normal. Completely, unremarkably normal. I woke up at some point in the middle of the night. No alarm, no noise I could identify. I just came awake suddenly the way you sometimes do. Full consciousness, no transition. The room was dark. The radiator was making its usual sounds. Clank, hiss, silence. I lay there for a moment, and then, the way you do at 3 in the morning, I decided I needed water. I got up, walked out of the bedroom, went into the kitchen, filled a glass in the tap, drank it standing there in the dark, and I was walking back to the bedroom when I noticed something. There was a door on the left side of the hallway, between the bathroom door and the entrance to the living room. A door that I did not recognize. I stopped walking. I stood there in the dark hallway, and I looked at it. It was a door, just a door, wooden, painted the same off-white as the rest of the trim in the apartment. It had a brass handle, the same style as the bathroom door, same style as the bedroom door. It sat flush in the wall. There was a very faint line of darkness at the bottom, the gap you'd expect between a door and the floor. I stood there for a long moment, and I thought, okay, I'm half asleep. This is the bathroom door. I got turned around. Except I was looking at the bathroom door. It was right there, 12 inches to the left of this one. Open, the way I always left it at night. 2 doors, side by side, where yesterday there had been one. My first thought, and I want to be honest about this, because this is what your brain actually does. My first thought was that I was remembering the layout wrong, that maybe there had always been 2 doors here, and I had just never processed it. I was tired. I'd been distracted for months. Maybe there was a linen closet or something, and I just never really looked at it. I told myself that. I actively talked myself into it standing in my own dark hallway at 3 a.m. I went back to bed. I didn't open it that night. I know that sounds strange. Maybe it sounds like a mistake. But here's the thing. In the moment, my brain had already decided on the linen closet explanation and filed it away. I went back to bed. I slept. In the morning, I made coffee, and I walked into the hallway with my mug. And I stood there, and I looked at the door. It was still there. In the daylight, it looked even more real, more permanent. The paint on the door matched the paint on the trim in a way that suggested it had been painted at the same time years ago, not recently. There was no smell of fresh paint. There was no visible seam in the wall around the frame, no roughness that would suggest recent installation. It looked like it had always been there. I set down my coffee on the kitchen counter, and I opened the door. It was a wall, just a flat plaster wall behind it, painted the same off-white. No depth at all. A door that opened onto nothing. I stood there with a handle in my hand, and I looked at a wall. My brain said, okay, old building. They bricked up a doorway at some point, kept the door casing, painted over everything. That happens. That is a real thing that happens in old converted buildings. It's a cosmetic anomaly. You just never noticed it before. I almost accepted that. Except I had painted that hallway. 3 weeks after I moved in, I'd gotten permission from the landlord, and I'd repainted the entire hallway myself, because the previous color was this depressing greenish gray. I had taped the trim. I had been in that hallway for an entire Saturday. I had stood in that exact spot. There was no door there when I painted. I called my landlord that afternoon, left a message explaining there was a door in my hallway I wanted to ask about. He called back 2 days later. He was slow with messages and said he didn't know what I was talking about, that the unit was a 1-bedroom with a bathroom and no additional doors in the hallway, and that if something was structurally wrong, I should send him a photo. I sent him a photo. He called back within an hour that time. He said, and I remember this clearly, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. That door isn't on any of the building plans I have. The second thing happened 4 days later. I came home from work, and the door was open, not wide open, just slightly, an inch or two, the same blank wall behind it, visible in a sliver of hallway light. I stood there for a very long time. I had not left it open. I knew I had not left it open. I had developed a habit, I'll admit this, of checking the door every time I left the apartment, giving it a push to make sure it was closed. The handle had no lock, but I'd started bracing a folded piece of cardboard under it, wedged against the floor, to keep it shut. The cardboard was on the floor. Not wedged, on the floor. Set aside. I called a friend that night and made him stay on the phone with me while I searched the apartment. Nothing was missing. Nothing else was disturbed. My windows were locked. My front door had been locked when I came home. Nothing was there. But something about the way the cardboard was placed, not kicked, not scattered, but set deliberately to the side, stayed with me, kept me awake until 4 a.m. Then came the sound. 6 days after the door appeared, at 11:47 at night. I checked my phone. I know the time. I heard something from behind that wall, a scraping sound, low and slow, like furniture being dragged across concrete, but muffled, like it was coming from deep in the wall, or below it, or from somewhere that shouldn't have had enough space for anything to move. It lasted about 20 seconds, and then it stopped, and the wall behind the door was still just a wall. 11 days after the door appeared, I woke up and I couldn't breathe. Not the way you can't breathe when you're panicking. The actual physical sensation of no air. Thick, hot air. Smoke. I sat up in bed. The bedroom was dark, but there was light under the door. Orange light. Moving. I got up and I opened the bedroom door, and the hallway was full of smoke. Not thick enough to be a full fire yet, but the kind of smoke that means you have 30 seconds before it is. I heard it before I saw it. This low roaring sound coming from inside the wall, from behind the door. The door was open, wide open, and there was light inside the wall. Actual orange light. Heat. The blank wall behind it was glowing at the seams like something on the other side was burning. I didn't think. My body just went. I grabbed my keys and my phone from the nightstand, and I ran down the hallway, past the bathroom, past the door, past the glowing wall, and I hit my front door so hard the deadbolt bruised my hand getting it open. I was in the stairwell. Then I was outside. I remember the cold hitting my face. 20-something degrees, and I was standing on the sidewalk in bare feet and a t-shirt. I stood outside on the sidewalk, and I looked up at the building. 3rd floor. My windows. No smoke. No glow. No visible fire. I called 911. I was shaking so hard I mistyped my address twice. The fire department came. They went in. They were up there for a while. They found nothing. No fire damage. No smoke residue. No evidence of burning. My apartment, they said, was fine. One of them came back down and asked if I'd been burning candles. Asked if I'd had the stove on. Asked gently if I'd been under a lot of stress lately. I said yes. To all of it, I said yes. Because what else do you say? They let me back in. The hallway was fine. The door was closed. The wall behind it was a wall. I slept in my car that night. I drove to a parking garage 2 blocks away, reclined the seat, and did not sleep at all. I watched the building through the windshield until the sun came up. I moved out 17 days later, broke my lease, lost my deposit. My landlord threatened to take me to small claims court and then never followed through. I don't know if he investigated. I don't know if he told whoever moved in after me. I've looked up the building's history, the address, old records, old news stories. I found references to the original use of the building. It had been a small manufacturing facility in the 40s and 50s, cold storage after that, then vacant for about 12 years before the renovation. I found one reference in an old city permit filing to a subterranean level that was sealed and non-accessible. That's the exact phrase. Sealed and non-accessible. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything. I don't know where the smoke came from or why the firefighters didn't find any trace of it. I don't know who moved the cardboard. I don't know how a door appears in a wall that you yourself have painted, in a hallway you walked through 1,000 times. What I do know is this: that door looked like it had always been there. Not new, not installed, not added. It looked like it was the original door, and the rest of the apartment was what had been built around it, like the building had been constructed to hide it, and then forgot. I still think about it, mostly at night, in that moment just before I fall asleep, when the day goes quiet and the dark gets big. I think about that orange light under the seams. I think about the scraping sound. I think about the way the cardboard had been set aside, not thrown, not kicked, but placed carefully, like something wanted me to know it could do it. I live on the ground floor now. No hallways, no converted buildings, no doors I didn't choose. But sometimes I walk through my apartment at night, running my hand along the walls, just checking, just making sure the walls are still only walls.